You think you've been making your own decisions. You haven't. You think your reactions are yours. Your feelings are yours. Your choices come from you. They don't. They were predicted, triggered, designed, not always by some mastermind sitting in the shadows. That would be too easy to fight. No. What's been controlling you, your entire life, is something far more dangerous. Patterns. Invisible ones. Someone pulls away. You chase. Someone questions you. You defend. Someone ignores you. You try harder. Someone gives you just enough attention. You get hooked. And every time it happens, you think it's random. You think it's emotional. You think it's just human. But it's not. It's a pattern you've been repeating for years, a script you never wrote, but keep performing perfectly. And the worst part? People learn it. They don't need to study you. They don't need a strategy. They just watch. They test. They push slightly. They pull back slightly. And the moment you react, they know. They know exactly how to move you, exactly how to get your attention, exactly how to make you invest energy, time, emotion, without ever giving you control. You've been played. Not once, not twice, your entire life. And here's the part no one tells you. It's not because people are evil. It's because you're predictable. Centuries ago, Niccolo Machiavelli saw this clearly. He didn't study emotions to understand people. He studied them to control outcomes. He watched powerful men collapse, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they couldn't control what they felt. He understood one brutal truth. The one who controls your emotions controls your behavior. And the one who controls your behavior never needs your permission. That is the game you've been playing without realizing it. And today, you're going to see it. Not as motivation, not as advice, but as it actually is. A system that has been used on you your entire life. But be warned. Once you see the game clearly, you will never be able to go back to being controlled again. And the final principle is the one that breaks the system completely. Let's begin the surgery. Number 1, the identity trigger. This is where most people get it wrong before the game even starts. You think people are influencing your logic, your decisions, your reasoning. They're not. They're going straight for something much deeper. Your identity, who you believe you are, what you think you're worth, how you think others see you. That's the real target. Because your identity is not stable, it's fragile. And more importantly, it's defensive. The moment it feels threatened, even slightly, you don't think. You react. And that reaction is the entry point. Think about the last time something got under your skin, not annoyed you, not irritated you. I mean, really got to you. It wasn't random. It wasn't just a bad comment. It hit something. Maybe they questioned your competence. Maybe they made you feel replaceable. Maybe they implied you're not as respected as you thought. And in that moment, something shifted. Your body tightened. Your focus narrowed. And suddenly, you had something to prove. That's not emotion. That's activation. That's someone pressing directly on the part of you that hasn't been fully secured. And here's the part most people never realize. They don't need to be accurate. They just need to be close enough to trigger the doubt that already exists inside you. Because once that doubt is activated, you do the rest. You explain. You defend. You overcommit. You chase clarity from someone who was never confused. From the outside, it looks like a conversation. From the inside, it's control. This is exactly what Niccolo Machiavelli understood. Power is not about forcing someone to act. It's about creating the right internal reaction so they act on their own. And identity is the most efficient lever for that. Because when your identity is touched, you don't pause to analyze. You move to protect, automatically, predictably, every time. So here is the shift. Starting now, you stop trusting your first reaction, not because it's wrong, but because it's exposed. The moment you feel that surge that need to respond, defend, correct, prove, you don't act, you observe. Just 1 second, that's all it takes. 1 second where you ask, what exactly was just targeted? Was that information, or was that a trigger? Because if it was a trigger, then the reaction you're about to give is not yours. It's programmed. And the moment you see that clearly, something breaks. The urgency disappears. The need to prove dissolves. The control slips. Because now, instead of being inside the reaction, you're looking at it. And people can only move you when you're inside it, not when you're watching it. Master this, and you don't just reduce influence, you interrupt it at the source. But this is still surface level, because even if you see the trigger, you can still be read. And what people can read, they can map, which is exactly where we go next. Number 2, the exposure leak. Most people think being emotionally open makes them authentic. It doesn't. It makes them readable. And anything that can be read can be used. Every time you react instantly, every time your face shifts, your tone changes, your energy spikes. You're not just expressing emotion, you're broadcasting data. You're telling the other person exactly what matters to you, exactly what bothers you, exactly where the pressure points are, and you don't even realize you're doing it. You think you're just being real, but from the outside, you're predictable, because patterns form fast. If someone sees that a slight withdrawal makes you chase, they don't need to guess next time. If they notice that questioning you makes you explain yourself for 5 minutes, they don't need to push hard. They already know where the door is, and more importantly, how to open it. This is why some people always seem in control in conversations. Not because they feel less, but because they show less. They understand something most people ignore. Your emotional reaction is leverage, and the moment you reveal it freely, you hand that leverage away. This is what Niccolò Machiavelli meant when he observed that those who display too much of themselves become easy to manage. Because once people can read you, they don't need to confront you. They just adjust around you. They say less. They pull back at the right time. They provoke subtly, and you fill in the rest. So here's the correction. You don't suppress emotion. You privatize it. You feel everything, but you don't perform it. There is a difference between experiencing something and displaying it in real time to someone who may benefit from seeing it. And that difference is control. When something hits you, anger, insecurity, frustration, you don't rush to express it. You hold it, not as repression, but as ownership. Because once it's visible, it's no longer fully yours. And when people stop seeing clear reactions from you, something shifts. They hesitate. They second guess. They lose accuracy. Because now they're operating without feedback. And without feedback, influence becomes guesswork. But even then, there's still a problem. Because some people don't need to see your reaction. They just need to know what has worked on you before. And if you've been rewarding those patterns, they're not guessing at all. Number 3, the reward loop. This is where it stops being about them and becomes about you. Because people don't keep influencing you by accident. They keep doing it because it works. Every behavior that gets a result from you gets reinforced. Every reaction you give becomes a signal that says, do that again. And people listen to signals far more than they listen to words. You can say you don't like being guilt-tripped, You can say you don't tolerate disrespect. You can say you're done chasing. It doesn't matter. If your behavior contradicts it, that's the truth they follow. Think about it. Someone makes you feel guilty, and eventually you give in. You just train them. Someone pulls away, and you reach out first, trying to fix it. You just confirm the pattern. Someone questions you, and you start explaining yourself in detail. You just rewarded the tactic. And now, they don't need to figure you out anymore. They have a system. This is what most people refuse to see. They think they're being targeted, but in reality, they've been conditioning the people around them for years, quietly, consistently, without ever noticing it. This is exactly how influence becomes a loop. Not because someone is constantly trying new strategies, but because they don't have to. They already found the one that works. And as long as it keeps working, it will keep happening. That's the brutal simplicity of human behavior. Reward creates repetition. Remove the reward, and the behavior dies. This is something Niccolo Machiavelli understood at a structural level. He didn't try to stop manipulation with resistance. He removed the incentive behind it. Because once there is no gain, there is no reason to continue. So here's what changes. You stop reacting in ways that resolve their pressure. When someone tries to guilt you, you don't argue your innocence. You make your decision and stand in it. When someone pulls away to make you chase, you don't close the distance. You let it stay open. When someone provokes you for a reaction, you don't give them one. Not dramatically, not aggressively, just nothing. And that nothing is what breaks the loop, because now the behavior produces no result, no reassurance, no attention, no emotional payoff. And without payoff, the pattern collapses. People either adjust or they leave. Both outcomes work in your favor, because the only people who stay are the ones who no longer benefit from controlling you. But here's where it gets more subtle. Some people don't rely on obvious tactics. They don't need guilt, distance, or pressure. They operate in a way that feels almost invisible, until you realize they've already shaped how you see everything. Number 4. The mirror of silence. Most people think silence is weakness. They think if they don't respond, they're losing ground. They think if they don't defend themselves, they're being overlooked, dismissed, disrespected. So they speak, they explain, they justify, they correct. And in doing that, they give the other person exactly what they came for. Engagement, energy, control. But silence, real silence, is not passive. It's confrontational, in a way most people are not prepared for. Because when someone brings emotional pressure into an interaction, they're not just expressing something, they're expecting something. A reaction. They expect you to rise to their tone, to match their intensity, to step into the emotional frame they've created. That's how the loop completes. But when you stay completely neutral, calm, steady, unaffected, something strange happens. The energy has nowhere to go. So it turns back toward them. Now they're the ones sitting in it. The frustration, the tension, the imbalance they tried to create. And for the first time, they're forced to feel it without your reaction softening it. This is why silence unsettles people. Not because it's empty, but because it reflects. It shows them exactly what they're doing without you saying a single word. This is a form of control that doesn't look like control. There's no argument, no dominance display, no attempt to win, just presence, stillness. And that stillness exposes everything. This is something Niccolo Machiavelli would recognize immediately. Because the highest form of power is not forcing movement, it's refusing to be moved. But there's a condition. This only works if the silence is real, not forced, not performed, not layered over suppressed emotion. Because people can feel that. They can hear it in your breathing, see it in your tension, catch it in the slight edge of your voice. And the moment they sense that your silence is just control on the surface, they know you're still affected. And once they know that, they keep going. Real silence comes from something deeper, from the understanding that what they're bringing into the interaction is not yours to carry, not yours to fix, not yours to respond to. It belongs to them, fully. When you operate from that place, you don't absorb anything. You don't react. You don't even feel the need to. And that's when the mirror becomes clear, because now they're not interacting with your emotions, they're facing their own. And most people don't like that reflection. But even this has a limit, because silence controls the moment, not the structure. And if you don't control the structure, someone else will control the timing. Number 5. Control the frame by controlling your timing. Most people don't realize this, but the moment you respond determines everything. Not just what you say, but how it's perceived, how much weight it carries, and who is actually in control. Because timing is not neutral, timing is authority. When you respond immediately to a message, a comment, a provocation, you think you're being attentive, but what you're actually doing is signaling urgency. And urgency reveals something. It reveals that something in you has already been moved, that you felt the pressure and reacted to it, fast, unfiltered, on their timeline. And the moment you do that, you lose control of the frame, because now they're not waiting for you. You're responding to them. This is why some people can destabilize you without saying anything extreme. They don't need to. They just create a small disturbance and wait. They know you'll fill the gap. They know you'll close the silence, clarify the tension, fix what feels unresolved. And in doing that, you hand them control over the rhythm. That's the game. The person who controls the pace controls the interaction. This is something Niccolo Machiavelli understood with precision. He observed that acting too early signals desperation, acting too late signals weakness, but acting on your own timing deliberately, without pressure, signals something else entirely: control. So here's what changes. You stop reacting in real time, not to play games, not to manipulate, but to remove yourself from their urgency. When something hits you, a message that feels off, a comment that provokes, you don't answer immediately. You create space. Even a few minutes is enough, because that space does something most people never experience. It separates feeling from action. It allows the emotional charge to settle. It gives you the ability to choose what actually represents you, instead of what was triggered. And that choice changes everything, because now your response is not reactive. It's positioned, it's clean, measured, detached from the pressure that created it. And people notice that. They feel it, because they're no longer controlling when you respond. They're waiting, and waiting shifts power. It forces them into uncertainty, forces them to question whether their move worked, forces them out of control and into reaction. That's the reversal. You don't speed up to match them. You slow down and make them adjust to you. But even timing has a weakness, because if your stability depends on how others treat you, then no matter how slow you move, you're still moving in response to them. Number 6. The dependency trap. This is where everything you've learned so far either holds or collapses. Because you can pause. You can stay silent. You can control your timing. But if you need something from the person in front of you, they still have leverage. And leverage is control. Most people don't realize how much of their emotional instability comes from this one thing. They are surrounded by people. They feel they have to perform for. They adjust their tone. They filter their thoughts. They manage their image. Not because they want to, but because they're afraid of what happens if they don't. Afraid of losing approval, losing connection, losing how they're perceived. So they perform confidence when they feel uncertain. They perform agreement when they disagree. They perform calm when they're not okay. And over time, that performance becomes exhausting. But more importantly, it becomes visible. Because when you need something from someone, their validation, their attention, their acceptance, they don't have to control you directly. They just have to control access to that thing. And now, every interaction is no longer equal. You're not showing up as yourself. You're negotiating. This is exactly what Niccolo Machiavelli observed in courts and power structures. The ones who shaped themselves around others were never secure. Not because they lacked ability, but because their position depended on maintaining the image. The moment they slipped, they lost everything. That's the trap. If your value depends on how well you perform, you will always be influenceable, because there's always something at stake. So here's the shift. You stop building your life around people who require you to be someone else to stay. And that requires something most people avoid. You show up without the performance times, before times you feel safe doing it. You let people see the version of you that isn't perfectly composed, the version that disagrees, that sets boundaries, that doesn't chase approval. And then you watch, because what happens next tells you everything. The ones who pull away were never connected to you. They were connected to the version of you that served them. But the ones who stay, without needing you to adjust, filter, or prove, those are the only environments where you become stable. Not because you built walls, but because you removed the need to protect yourself constantly. In those spaces, there is nothing to leverage, no performance to threaten, no approval to withhold. And when there is no leverage, influence disappears. But there's still one layer deeper than this. Because even if you remove dependency from others, you can still be controlled by something far more subtle. The story you've been living inside your entire life. Number 7. Become the author. This is where the game actually ends. Not where you manage reactions, not where you control behavior, but where you remove the mechanism that allowed you to be controlled in the first place. Because everything up to this point, the pauses, the silence, the timing, the boundaries, they all depend on one thing: stability. And most people don't have it. Not real stability. Because underneath everything, they're still operating from a script they didn't write. A story about who they are, what they're worth, what they need from others to feel okay. And that story is not theirs. It was built slowly, from how they were treated, what they were told, what they had to become to be accepted. And now, they live inside it, without ever questioning it. That's the deepest level of influence. Not when someone changes your behavior, but when they can tap into the beliefs that already define you. Because once they know that story, or even sense parts of it, they don't need to push hard. They just align with it. They reinforce it, challenge it, distort it. And you react, not to them, but to what the story says is true. This is why two people can hear the same words and respond completely differently. One is grounded, the other is triggered. Not because of the situation, but because of the identity underneath it. This is the part Niccolo Machiavelli understood at the highest level. Real power is not controlling others. It's becoming someone who cannot be internally redirected. Someone whose sense of self is not open to negotiation. So here's what changes. You stop asking, how do I react better? And you start asking something far more dangerous. Is what I believe about myself even true? You examine it. What do you think gives you value? Where did that come from? What do you think you need from others to feel stable? Who taught you that? What are you afraid of losing? And why does losing it feel like losing yourself? Because anything that feels like that is leverage, and as long as it exists, you can be moved. So, you go deeper. You define your values clearly, not ideally. What do you stand on when it costs you something? You define your worth independent of performance, not based on results, approval, or usefulness. And you define your needs, real ones, not the cravings of insecurity, but what actually sustains your peace. And once those are clear, something shifts permanently. You stop negotiating your identity in real time. You stop adjusting yourself to maintain connection. You stop reacting to protect something fragile. Because it's no longer fragile, it's chosen. And when it's chosen, it's stable. At that point, people can still speak. They can still challenge you. They can still try. But there's nothing for them to grab. No insecurity to press. No confusion to exploit. No internal contradiction to amplify. That's what being uninfluenceable actually means. Not closed off, not emotionless, but grounded enough that nothing external can rewrite you. You feel everything, but you don't become it. You bend, but you don't break. And every time something tries to pull you out of yourself, you return. Completely. Because now, you're not reacting inside someone else's narrative. You're operating from your own. And when you hold the pen, no one else gets to write. Now you understand. Not the surface version. Not the comfortable version. The real one. You understand why you kept reacting when you told yourself you wouldn't. Why the same patterns repeated with different people. Why you kept feeling pulled into conversations, into dynamics, into situations that drained you more than they gave. It wasn't random. It wasn't bad luck. And it wasn't just how people are. It was structure. You were being read. Your identity was being triggered. Your reactions were being observed. Your patterns were being rewarded. Your timing was being controlled. Your dependencies were being leveraged. And underneath all of it, your story was never truly yours. That's why it felt like a loop. Because it was. And loops don't break just because you see them once. They break when you decide you're no longer available for them. That's the line. Right there. Because from this point forward, you don't get to say you didn't know. Now you do. So the next time someone pulls away and you feel the urge to chase, you'll notice it. The next time someone questions you and you feel the need to prove, you'll catch it. The next time silence feels uncomfortable and you want to fill it, you'll see exactly what's happening. And in that moment, you have a choice. Not a motivational one. Not an emotional one. A structural one. You either return to the pattern or you break it. And breaking it will cost you. It will cost you the version of yourself that needed to be understood. It will cost you the comfort of being liked by people who benefited from your reactions. It will cost you connections that only existed because you were easy to influence. And that's the part most people avoid. They'd rather stay controlled than become alone. But understand this clearly. You're not losing people. You're losing dynamics that required you to be smaller than you are. And what replaces them is something most people never reach. Clarity, stability, control over your own internal world that no one can touch without your permission. That is power. Not loud, not aggressive, but absolute. So now I'll ask you something simple. Are you still going to react the same way now that you see it? Or are you actually done being played? If you're still here, prove it. Type this in the comments. I don't react. I choose. And if you're paying attention, really paying attention, you already know this isn't content you casually consume. This is something you apply or you ignore. There is no middle ground. Subscribe if you haven't. Not for motivation, for reminders, because the world will keep testing you, and most people will fail those tests without even realizing it. Most won't change. That's the point. I'll see you in the dark.